Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder when I leave the house and deliver an episode to you while I walk to my son's school. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good afternoon, listeners. It is a lovely springtimey day here in suburban Chicago. It's March 4th and the sun is shining. I'm not wearing gloves, so you know it's warmed up nicely. And I'm recording this episode for the second time. Listeners, I may have to try to find a new solution for recording for your pleasure because my phone keeps stopping while it's recording. This is the third episode I've lost this season where I recorded it and I got home and I discovered my phone had stopped recording. Not good. But anyway, maybe I'll be smarter or better or something as I'm recording for you here. So today I am going to talk about my shelf of opportunity. I mention this fairly regularly. You hear from me during the top of the stack when I tell you how many games are left on it. And occasionally you get a glimpse every month because I tell you the 3 games or 4 games that I'm trying to play. But it's been a while since I've talked about the whole shelf here on the show. So I thought I would do that today. And I'm introducing a new thing that I'm going to do. So stay tuned for that toward the end. So as a reminder, shelf of opportunity is the phrase that I use and a lot of people use for the games I haven't played. I don't keep a literal shelf because I have too many to keep on one shelf, and I like to organize my games in different ways, and so putting all the games I haven't played in one spot would be kind of depressing. But I think of it as a shelf of opportunity because I love the idea that there's this opportunity to play a new game always sitting on my shelf. That said, I reflected in the top of the stack this month that I'm just finding a little less inspiration in the shelf of opportunity than I have in past months, or I did this month. I found it a little bit harder, just a smidge harder, to pick which games to play. And so I thought it would be a good time to kind of do a survey of the list and see what's there and give you a sense of the kinds of games I'm looking at. So in reviewing the list, I find 3 different categories of games broadly. There are games that are there for novelty's sake or collection's sake, meaning games that I'm not really thinking I'm going to play, but that I think have amusing, sentimental value for being in my collection. And so those games, I'm not against playing them, and I probably ought to, just so that I've played them once, but these aren't games I'm expecting are going to make it into the regular rotation. But I'm still amused by owning them and enjoy owning them. The second category of game, I would say, are games that I'm not really that excited to play. For whatever reason, I picked them up in various ways, and over time they've just grown less and less interesting to me. And while I'm loath to get rid of a game without playing it, that feels bad to me. These games seem like they give me the least excitement in terms of trying to play them. And then the third kind of game, I would say, are games I'm genuinely excited to play. I just haven't had time or opportunity. And then a number of games are also games I've tried to play by putting them on the top of the stack and have failed. So there are games that are lined up to do the repeat position. So those are the 3 types of games on my list. I will go through them now. I'll start with the games that I've put on the shelf of opportunity before. I've put on my top of the stack before and just haven't gotten played. That would be Queen's Architect, Moonga Invaders, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the board game. You've heard me lament that one quite a bit. Argent the Consortium, MOA. I don't think actually MOA has been on my list. I've just tried to play it. SPQF, Julchen und die Monster, Res Publica 2230 AD. Yeah, that's it. So those are games that I've tried to play and haven't gotten to the table for whatever reason. But they are games that I can put in my repeat category, my 4th extra game for the top of the stack. All right, so let's go through. I'll start with games that I have in here for novelty's sake. I have The Sinking of the Titanic and Titanic the board game. Titanic the board game is really a chintzy mass market game made to try to capitalize on the movie, but it's not actually about the movie at all. It's really really pretty crass. The Sinking of the Titanic, on the other hand, is this sort of weird, kitschy 1970s game that's got a rotating board and a weird second phase where you're floating around going to islands, which isn't a thing that the survivors of the Titanic had to do. So that's amusing, and I'd like to play that at some point. The Columbo detective game and Murder, She Wrote, both games based on those popular television series. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the game. This is different than the Buffy the Vampire Slayer board game, which was released a couple years ago. This one was released in 2001. I believe it was designed by Rob Daviau, and it's generally seen as being the better of the two mass market Buffy games that was released. They released another one with a very similar title, which is not supposed to be as good. Then we have Electronic Mall Madness, Clue the Office, This Game Goes to 11, and The Cattleman. These are all games that I've picked up in various places for various reasons, and they're all kind of silly and probably not that exciting to play, but I have them in my collection anyway and would enjoy playing them at some point. All right, games that I'm not really keen to play. There's not that many. I have this game Infamy, which is a futuristic gangster-themed game. I got it because the designer is Travis Hill, or Travis Chance. I think Travis Chance, who is a fairly well-known designer now, but it's not very well reviewed, and I don't know, it might be fun to play at some point. But Lord of the Dead is a little $3 Kickstarter game I got because it was interesting, the idea of somebody trying to make a $3 Kickstarter game. The rules are really difficult to read, and the game is shockingly complex for what it is, so I haven't been able to get that out. Twist of Fate is a tiny little game about Oliver Twist. At some point I can imagine playing that. It's kind of a micro game. Where Art Thou Romeo is a social deduction game set in the world of the Romulets and the Capulets and the Montagues. Sort of, it uses the same artwork as that other game about Romeo and Juliet from Crash Games, and I can't remember the name of it right now. But I haven't really had a chance to play that, and don't have a lot of desire to do so. And then finally, Time Pirates is an Alan Moon game with a terribly atrocious cover in a sort of large mass market style box. I got it for free at Origins. They were handing out stacks of them, so I think they had to have been like, you know, damaged out or donated out, and it doesn't tickle my fancy. So I'm not sure. Those games might eventually just go away because I don't have time to play them, but they are potentials. And then I have a bunch of games that I'm really excited to play, but haven't gotten to, and for some reason, so that's what I thought I would talk about today. The first is Vast, the Crystal Caverns. I've had this game, I got it in the original Kickstarter. The very first Vast Kickstarter I thought was really cool. I backed it. It came, I never got around to playing it because people kept talking about how hard it was to learn. Then he did another Kickstarter with updated player boards and cards correcting some things, and I backed the upgrade kit so that I could have the proper cards and boards, and I still haven't played it. I did open it in order to put the upgrade kit in the box, but then I put it back on my shelf. So that's a game I've been meaning to play. I think it sounds fun. I just haven't gotten to it. Miskatonic School for Boys is another game from Fun to 11 Games in the same line as Miskatonic School for Girls. Whereas in School for Girls, it's a deck building game where you build the other players' decks as well as your own. In Miskatonic School for Boys, you're all Cthulhu teachers and you're trying to find the one boy who's not infected yet, I guess. It sounded amusing and I like the art, so I did get it, but haven't really had a chance to try it. Panic Station is the first game that I know of to really make interesting use of the Thing as an idea. Some people have said Dark Moon captures that spirit better, as does The Thing, Infection and Outpost 31, and Who Goes There, and any number of other games. But Panic Station is sort of the famous one. I have printed out the updated rules, which apparently make it easier to play. So I'd like to try that at some time. It does have an annoying metal box, though. Teach You is a famous ladder style trick-taking game, which I've always wanted to try. I got it in a trade, but I haven't had a chance. Student Bodies is a zombie-themed board game about kids in a high school. It's kind of cutthroat, looks fun. Space Freaks, that's a game I got. I won it in a podcast. They were giving a game away, and I submitted a joke or something and won the giveaway. It's a game about aliens fighting each other. The box is really intriguing looking, but the gameplay hasn't grabbed me yet, but at some point. Acquire, the 1960s Sid Sackson classic. I think I have an original edition. I got it at Goodwill. It's very old looking, but supposedly really good. I'm intrigued to try it at some point. I have Moa, the Martin Wallace game. I got that used from somebody. It looks interesting. It's sort of a variation on the same kinds of thing he was doing in The Arrival, where he's playing around with an area control mechanism in which part of what you're trying to do is make a deal with the devil, where you try to decide how much of the land to yield to the oppressive forces coming in. It's vaguely themed around New Zealand. All the characters are sort of tribal looking birds done in the style, and they're New Zealand birds, and the invaders are dogs. So it's an interesting game. I read the rules and figured out how to play. I even played a game of it by myself, which doesn't count because it's not a one-player game. Like, I played two-handed just to see how it works, but then didn't get it out. Founders of Gloomhaven looks really fun, but very complicated, and I haven't had a chance to try that yet. New Angeles is a large area control game. Has a really interesting win condition where each player is a corporation and you win if you end up with more money than the corporation you hate. And that's how you win. So everybody hates one of the other corporations. And I guess there's one spoiler in there who tries to get ahead of everybody or something. I don't know exactly. 5 Points Gangs of New York is a game I really don't know much about at all. We won it at a White Elephant contest, but looks fun. Or interesting anyway. Android Infiltration is a sort of 2-player or 3-player push your luck game that looks fun from Donald X. Vaccarino. The best reviewed of the small box Android universe games. I think they made 3 of them. Mainframe was one of the others. I don't remember the third. Rattus is on my top of the shelf this month. Merchant of Venus is a famous pick up and deliver game that I've wanted to play for a long time, and I found new in shrink, even though it's well out of print, so I'm excited to try that at some point. Lords of Zidit is a well-known sort of adventuring game from the same people who made Seasons. Very well regarded, and every now and again I'll see people talking about playing that, so excited to try that at some point. Liberté, the Martin Wallace game about the French Revolution. Its interesting mechanism is that you are not on the side of the revolutionaries nor on the side of the royalty, but rather just on the side of yourself. And so, like a lot of 18xx type games, you're trying to navigate among the factions and come out ahead without losing your head. Glory to Rome is a game that I've wanted to play for a long time. I don't own a real copy, but I own a print and play copy that I put together, and I would love to try that at some point. I like Carl Chudik's work. Dawn of the Peacemakers, I've talked about a number of times, is a campaign game in which you play competing ambassadors from countries that are on the verge of war, and part of what you have to do is keep your countries from going to war. Sentinels of the Multiverse is a kind of individual or co-op game in which each player controls a deck of cards representing a superhero, and your goal is to try to beat the villains working in a team. It's supposed to be very good. Got that cheap. Steam, I've talked about. That's a Martin Wallace game. Famous Martin Wallace game about trains. Looks interesting. Jaws and The King's Dilemma, both of which I've talked about a little bit here and there. So what I've decided I'm going to do, starting next month, is after this episode goes up, I'm going to post a link on the Board Game Geek Guild and in our show notes to my geek list where I keep this shelf of opportunity. And each month, when I'm building my shelf of opportunity, the first game that I put on my list is going to be the game that has the most thumbs on my list. So basically I'm letting the Board Game Geek community, and more specifically members of the Pick Up and Deliver Guild, choose which game I play next. So if you decide you are interested in helping me decide which game I'm going to play, you can follow the link that I'll put up in the guild and go over to you can follow the link that I'm going to put in the guild and go over to Board Game Geek and go over to that Shelf of Opportunity list, and you can thumb the different entries that are there. Like I said at the beginning of the month, when I go to make my top of the stack list, I will look at the games that have the most thumbs, and I will put the top one on my top of the stack and I'll get it played. So it's up to you, dear listeners. Now, if you haven't generally been to Board Game Geek, you'll need to make an account before you can thumb things, but it's easy and free. And then you can join the Board Game Geek Guild and chit-chat with me and the other regulars there. So that just about wraps up my time. I'm sure you can hear the busy road near my son's school that I'm waiting to cross. So I'm going to call it a day. Thank you for joining me on my walk today, and I hope that you'll pop over to the guild and say hello and let me know what's on your shelf of opportunity. And I hope that your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Thanks for joining me. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.